All right. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the February session of the Nashville Power BI User Group. We're real excited to have you guys here. I think you're in for a bit of a treat. We've got one of my favorite presenters, Sekou Tyler, talking about data storytelling, which is a subject that's very near and dear to my heart, in part because I'm actually not the best at it, so it's always enjoyable to hear about this subject from somebody who is really strong in the subject matter. So I think you guys are in for a treat. We'll go ahead and just run through the agenda real quick. So we got a few announcements to go over. We're going to go over a little bit of what's new in Excel, Power Apps, and Power Automate. There's actually nothing new in Power BI since the last meeting. The last meeting was in January.
You're on mute again.
It's like every time one of the system sounds hits, it mutes you.
So try that again. All right. So yeah. So what's new in Excel, Power Apps, and Power Automate, and then we'll get into our main presentation. So just wanted to note we are looking for an event space. We are hoping to get back to in-person meetings. So if you guys have any leads on some in-person event spaces, definitely reach out to any one of us, to myself, Sekou, or Michael Hewitt. We'd love to chat with you about being able to host this event, to host our event with you. So future meetings. So today, we've got Sekou Tyler telling us about data storytelling in the age of big data. And then next month, I'm doing a session on requirements gathering. So basically, you've been given this assignment of creating a report. Where do you even get started, right? You're starting with a blank page. How do you move forward with that? So I find this to be really useful for anyone who hasn't, who's maybe starting something new. A blank page. How do you make sure you set yourself up for success? Okay. We want to talk about some of the other things that are going on outside of the Power BI user group. So a wonderful conference that I'm really looking forward to. It's just over a month and a half away, so less than 2 months away. That's going to be, less than 1 month away. Called Datatune. And so if you guys haven't signed up, you definitely need to sign up. I mean, this is a really, this is going to be a great conference in Nashville. It's super cost effective. So, some of the conferences can be a little bit more expensive, but so definitely be sure to check this one out. I've looked at some of the sessions, and it's going to be a really fantastic conference. So I encourage everybody to check this one out. There's also a day of pre-cons, and so I've signed up for that myself. So I'm going to be attending the full conference on Saturday, as well as the one of the pre-cons as well. So I encourage everybody to look into Datatune. This one has actually just occurred in the past. I left this slide in here just because I wanted to call out. Actually, between myself, Sekou, and Michael Hewitt, we all presented at SQL Saturday Atlanta, the BI and Data Analytics edition, and along with a few other Nashvillians as well. So I think maybe next year we should look into getting a bus. So if you guys are interested in this, that's always a great event, and it's practically around the corner. So I encourage you guys to consider this for next year. But also something a little bit closer is SQL Saturday Atlanta. So this is their more traditional SQL Saturday focused on SQL Server, and so that's going to be in the same place at the Innovation Academy. It's a STEM high school, and I got to say it was a really interesting campus. They didn't build high schools like that when I went to high school. So it should be a great one as well. So be sure to check it out. And there's also a SQL Saturday Austin, I think, that's coming up pretty soon as well. A little bit further away though. All right, so I want to just talk a bit about what's new in Excel. Like I say, no Power BI desktop or Fabric update yet. So that's pretty typical not to have one in January, but they did have an update for Excel. So I just want to go over a couple of neat things. I don't think this is going to change anyone's life, but just wanted to let you know. So let me get this out of the way. Okay, so one of the things is in forms, you can now have your formed result go directly into Excel, and as you get new data, it will automatically update. So if I come in here and collect a new response, and if I have a new tab, and so pretty basic here, let's fill this out for sake of. Okay, I know this is your email address, but we'll just make this up for a second. So if we submit that, and so now if we go back, you'll see that there's a new response right here. So you do this open in Excel button here. I've had a little bit of difficulty making this work for the web version. What you can do is this will. When you open this in the web version, as you add a new row to this, it'll automatically populate in the Excel, which is I think is kind of neat. So I actually had somebody ask me about this the other day, and we were working on like a Power Automate solution that would add new data to this. So here we go. This is the visual. So someone sort of fills out the survey information. So you see they've got this one yellow row down here, and as they hit submit, a few seconds later, you get another one to pop up. Like I said, I did have a bit of a trouble getting the open in Excel for the web to work. It only works for Excel for the web. It doesn't work for Excel for desktop for some reason. Wish they would bring that in. But just if you have that need, it does help to make that process a little bit easier for you. There's also a new date picker in Excel for the web. Again, there's also an Excel for the web. Any file, any cell that has a date in it, or that has that is formatted as a date, if you just double click on it, it'll give you a date picker. And so I'm not sure that this is really easier than just typing in a date. I mean, because that's you can always just type it in, right? So I'm not sure that that's easier, but hey, if this was a requirement from a stakeholder, you've got a way to do that now. You can also insert pictures into a cell. So let me show you what that looks like. I should do that here. And so if we say insert, I'm going to insert picture from this icon over here. So let's insert that. And 1 second. And so now you can insert a picture into this cell, and as you can resize the cell to control the width. Again, this is not exactly new. You've been able to insert pictures for a long time, but it sort of existed outside of a cell for some reason. You can imagine that you might use this to parameterize the picture you bring in, import a customer logo based on the customer that you were picking. So you could have a report page that's all about some customer, and it brings in the customer logo. So you can make it dynamic in that way. Oh, and then they're also working on pivot tables for the iPad. I haven't tried that one myself. I question how valuable an experience that would be having using pivot tables on an iPad. But hey, if you have users who are really big iPad fans, then they've got that function now. So I wanted to tell you guys a little story about this weekend when I was in Atlanta for SQL Saturday. And if you guys know Ed Pearson, well, Ed came up to me and he was asking me about an app that I made a while back. And so I was sorry. So I started. So I went on to Power Apps to build this app idea that he had. He wanted something that would scan a QR code and populate some data. And so it just kind of got me thinking about like how could I build this? And I wanted to just sort of build a really quick proof of concept. And so I went into Power Apps, so make.powerapps.com. and they had a demo version of the new Copilot Maker. So this is the option to make apps, make Power Apps with Copilot. And it was not a perfect experience, but I gotta admit it was really interesting. So I just type in a textual description of what I'm looking for. I want an app with a QR reader and a table, and and it's worked on that for a minute or two, and it popped up a result. And like I say, it didn't know exactly what kind of data I wanted it to record, but it took a best guess, and there were some errors in it. It didn't guess what I wanted perfectly. How could it? But it was, But then I say, I just type into the Copilot, get rid of this column, add this new column with a data type, change this integer data type to a decimal, so on and so forth, and rename a column. And in 5 or 10 minutes, I had a really rough functioning app that would have maybe taken an hour before. So I thought that was really interesting, and just something that I wanted to call out. If you have access to Copilot in your enterprise, definitely check that out. I think that's got a lot of potential. I don't think it's going to replace Power Apps app developers, but it does, I think, streamline that process and make it. It just takes up some of the drudgery out of it, and makes it easier for you to do the work that you've been tasked to do. So if you have access to it, I would encourage you to check that out. There's some other enhancements for Power Apps, but I'm not going to go over all of these. These are fairly more basic. And then for Power Automate Desktop, the big thing there is that it now supports single sign-on. So if you're working in an enterprise environment, which I don't have that to demo, but if you are working in an enterprise environment, then it definitely is something to check out. All right, and so that's what's new in Power Apps, Power Automate, Excel, and so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sekou Tyler to tell us all about data storytelling.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for the introduction. Thanks, everybody, for joining. I know we had a last-minute switch, so appreciate you changing and coming with the change of the topic. We will eventually talk about Copilot, but I just didn't build it out, so we're going to talk about storytelling. So here we go with actually getting into it. Hop into it. And then, as Mike said, DataToom. So I just want to reiterate DataToom. Great conference. A lot of people, a lot of great stuff on here. The website, datatoomconference.com. A lot of great sessions, a lot of great speakers. Won't necessarily just do a deep dive, but come in here, click on sessions, you see what is here. A lot of Power BI stuff, a lot of data architecture stuff, a lot of AI, a lot of great stuff for the price point. It's absolutely amazing. So if you're local to Nashville, highly recommend you come. And mention pre-conference stuff as well. Anything from Microsoft Fabric to, where is our pre-conference actually at? Data science, building up a data, Snowflake, data storytelling, LinkedIn growth, so you understand LinkedIn. And then the biggest one for this community is probably Fabric in a Day. So if you understand who Alex Powers is in the Power BI community, lead a full-on session on Microsoft Fabric, and you will get hands-on experience to Fabric in a Day. I'm sorry, Dan Evans is doing that one, not Alex. Dan Evans will do that. And like we did last month, if you joined the session last month, this will go more in depth. Last month we did really high level. This will really get you into the weeds of understanding the difference between a lakehouse, SQL endpoints, data factory, just the different things that we showed off last week. So this is really good deep dive stuff going to go there. So that's my pitch on that. But if you didn't come for that, you came here storytelling with data. Let's go ahead and hop into that. So I'm Sekou Tyler. Today's the 15th, and let's hop into storytelling in the age of big data. I'm excited to talk to you all. I'm very laid back, very chill. So if there's any questions, either put them in the chat or raise your hand and come off speaker. I want to make this interactive. I just presented this last weekend, so I'm actually used to people being in front of me and see reactions. So doing it virtually is going to be really cool to see the type of energy and stuff that comes about. Thanks for our sponsors. Again, I told you I did this last weekend. I didn't even take the slide out, but I was supposed to put it in here. So thanks for our sponsors there for SQL Sekou. But this is me, Sekou Tyler. Please follow me on all social media handles at SQLSEKOU and then at SQL Sekou on YouTube. I post Tuesday and Thursday. I have a podcast I post on Tuesday and then actual technical content on Thursdays. I think I'm really close to 800 subscribers, so y'all can help me get there. That'd be fantastic. I've been in the data industry for over 10 plus years. I'm now the founder / principal analyst consultant / whatever title I want to give myself. But basically have my own company where I focus on BI, reporting, and data warehouse and data visualization. Some of the certifications that I have are Databricks SQL, I'm a Tableau certified consultant, Microsoft Power BI. I took the Microsoft Fabric 600 exam. I have absolutely no idea if I passed. The exam was challenging, but I'm glad I took it. I'll know if I pass when the official release comes. And then Alteryx Designer as well. As far as community activities, you all are here now for National Power BI, but also co-lead the Tableau user group. I'm Tableau ambassador, and as I mentioned earlier, 10 Minute Tuesday. So why I bring that up is that about concepts about data visualization and storytelling more so than the tool. I have my favorite tools that I use day in and day out, but I care about the concepts when it comes to storytelling and how can I do the exact same thing in multiple tools. But really, the real MVPs, I'm a family man at heart, regardless of all technology stuff. It's my beautiful wife, my daughter. They had a great Valentine's Day. We had a great Valentine's Day. It was amazing. But this is my family. This is who I do it for. So again, the same concept is really, how do I tell the same story so that I can get money to provide for these people? That's really what I care about and how I do what I do. But these are people that keep me centered and make me me and allow me to do what I do. But y'all didn't come for that. Y'all came for storytelling. So let's start with storytelling and data analysis. The biggest part that I like to challenge everybody, when you're creating a story, when you're starting to think about your requirements, when you start to look at your data set, how can you humanize the information there? Natural is really big in healthcare. And one example I like to think of, if you're counting a visualization by a patient ID, and then you're doing a breakout by diagnosis, we understand those are dimensions and then some type of quantitative information. But really, what does that diagnosis mean? What does that patient ID mean? It's actually a human being on the other side of that. So what is that patient ID and what are you trying to count and what are you trying to show? Another example is I have a client where we're doing dry cleaning. And for me, piece counts and number of clothes and all the information, those are requirements. But I actually had to take a suit to a dry cleaner. And when I went in there, I was like, oh, whoa, this actually makes a lot of sense. So now I can actually understand what the end users are consuming with their day in and day out operation. So I challenge you to humanize your data and don't just think of it as necessarily just rows and records and values, but how can you actually put a human touch to it to what you're trying to display? Another thing that with storytelling is it helps enhance your comprehension. Stories provide context and meaning to data, aiding the comprehension and retention of the insights. Short story, it is basically a lot faster to understand a story visually than it is for you to read a table that's full of rows and columns and charts. So that information is there. And then it drives decision making. So compelling narratives derive from data, encourage informed decision making, guiding strategic directions and action. Basically, I want to harp on this is that every single, for the most part, where you can do it, every single visualization, every single storytelling, you want some type of outcome or action to happen. You don't want to just put visualizations and information and data onto a chart just because ultimately you want it to drive some type of decision for the business that's being looked at. So we're going to understand big data within Microsoft Fabric. So what's the definition of big data, characteristics of big data, volume, variety, and velocity, and then introduction to the medallion architecture. So basically, definition of big data, it's a lot of data. It can be volume, it can be structured, or it can be unstructured data. Unstructured data means that is a text, MP4, images, your IoT data, social media posts, JSON, whatever it is, right? That could be unstructured. Structured data from a data perspective, stuff that we're used to, is tables that have columns and rows and structure in a tabular format. These data sets can be characterized not only by the volume, but also by the velocity of the different data types. So big data doesn't necessarily mean the amount of volume. Big data can often mean terabytes, petabytes, and then exabytes as well. So there's a volume to it, but it can be concurrency and how often stuff is updated as well. So biggest piece when it comes to a Microsoft perspective, if you haven't heard of OneLake, I like to mentally equate it to OneDrive, to where you have folders that you can store actual Excel files in there, and that's your tabular format. But then you also have the ability to store your MP4s, your JPEGs, your audio files, your IoTs, whatever it is, right? You can actually drag and drop that into OneDrive, and that becomes your storage unit. So to me, from a data side, OneLake is. Can you hear me? All right, so one link is that component for it. And whoever's talking can go on mute unless you have a question. All right, so here is Fabric as a core. The concept of Fabric is to be a one-stop shop for all your data needs. You have Data Factory, which will move your data. You have your Synapse data engineering, which is basically like your pipeline. So you're building out the pipes to go from your source system to your end system. You have your data warehousing, which is what we typically use from the BI side, where you have your relational database in there. You have data science, where you're doing some of your machine learning models and some of your predictive analytics there. You have your real-time analytics. So you have your IoT hubs, whatever is being parsed in, you use Synapse. And then you have Power BI, which is what we're here today, which has a gold star because that's the specific audience for that. The goal of OneLake is to try and remove as many data silos as possible. So what we typically see is that someone in data engineering could create a pipeline that will go to Power BI, but then your data science is using a different data set that is not necessarily used by data engineering. They might create something else, or there's some type of disconnect between departments or between personas, so on and so forth. So OneLake, the goal is the 3 different personas, your data engineer, your data science, your data analyst, are using the same source data set as much as possible in one area, is not being exported out to a semantic model in Power BI that doesn't match the source system in SQL Server, or is not being ported out from your data scientists. The goal is to have this in one area so you have as much as possible a single source of truth. The one concept with OneLake is that simply no matter which item you start with, they will all store the data in OneLake, similar to how Word, Excel, and PowerPoint save documents into OneDrive. So within here as well, sometimes data scientists might need unstructured data sets for that information. It's all stored in OneLake. We as developers, data analysts, BI developers, what we're going to call ourselves, our stuff needs to be structured, typically in a tabular format that can be stored in OneLake as well. So let's explore the medallion architecture. So this is more conceptually concepts of the medallion architecture, but basically what we want to do is we have our bronze layer, which is the raw layer. This is the source information where there have not been any transformations, any aggregation, anything done to this as well. It's just strictly the raw information that we have. Basically what this looks like, if we are importing JSON files and putting a CSV file, any type of additional information we have, we need that to store in the bronze layer. We want that to be our source truth of that. The silver layer means it's starting to get a little bit of aggregation, a little bit of cleanup, a little bit of additional information. So there could be some ETL on there, some removing of columns that aren't necessary. There could be some timestamps, so on and so forth. Right? There's some information where it starts to get a little bit cleaner. As a storyteller, as a data analyst, as a data visualization, whatever you want to call yourself, our goal for the most part is to live in the gold area. We want our data to be clean as possible. We want it to be aggregated as much as possible. We want to bring in information that's valid, and we want to do as much of that in the source as necessary, because that just makes our performance in the Power BI or in the tool of our choice much better. In the gold area, you can have different file types. So if you're using a Parquet, or if you're using a relational database, or even if you're using Excel, right? You want these gold area to be as clean and put together as possible, because it makes life much easier when you're putting that on top of the tool. So pause. Mike, are there any questions on this at all? I'm gonna take silence as no. So this is the architecture. So as data analysts, storytellers, we want to live in the gold area. We want our stuff to be clean. We want it to be there so that way when we're creating reports, it's very awesome and very clean for us. So another thing, when it comes to specifically Power BI, the goal of this is to understand that within, there's a transformation going on within Power BI. So right now we're using a lot of lakehouse, warehouse, and a lot of information. The source system can start to be leveraged as Parquet files, and then that starts to turn into Delta tables. Parquet files are column storage. So it's basically a different concept of what we're used to in a relational database. It's column storage. Delta tables are a lot faster than what we're used to sometimes with CSV. So what you're going to see with people who are starting to use Direct Lake, there could be a shift. I've seen this in Databricks. I've seen this in not so much Snowflake, but primarily Databricks, to where they might make a really wide table because the performance isn't that big of a deal, because Delta tables are optimized. So I call that out specifically because what we're taught with Power BI is that we need a star schema. Vertipack is specifically optimized for that. But if you're doing a direct lake connection to a delta table, it could be possible that there could be, depending on who you connect with, the chance that you might have a super wide delta table that has very great performance in Power BI. So it's not there. I've seen it in other products, but just know that if you start seeing that language pop up within like the next year or so, could be a chance of that because delta tables are just really, really fast. So I would definitely recommend looking at Parquet files, delta tables, and the importance of kind of performance there and why people are going more towards delta tables as well.
Hi, you've reached the voicemail of Michael McKinley. Thanks.
All right, so what does that mean for the stakeholders? So we talked about data modeling, we talked about that, we got the goal layer, we understand that stuff, but do our stakeholders care? Majority, I'll put quotation marks around majority. I think majority don't care if the source comes from Excel, if it comes from Fabric, AWS, Databricks, SQL, whatever. They just want the results. Ultimately, if you have a deadline at Friday morning at 9 p.m. or 9 a.m. to a CEO who might have a meeting at noon, try telling him that your DAX performance is not great on your visualization, therefore I'm not able to get your results, right? They're going to look at you like, what are you talking about? I need my results. I need this done. So ultimately, from my experience, is that the source of it, while it's great from a technical perspective, a lot of stakeholders just want their results. They want their information. They want to know where it comes from. They care about the end result and their outcomes, right? What is the problem are we solving? What's the end result? How can I make action on this? So realistically, when you're creating a story, what am I looking at? Like, what is this information in front of me? Why do I care about it? What action can I take with this? So I see this information. What can I do with it? What KPIs am I measuring with this visualization? What are the key components that I really, really care about here? And then how does this make my business better, right? If you're a business owner or someone who's looking at reports, ultimately the goal is like, how can we improve or see what we're doing good at? And then they want the results faster and accurate. We definitely seen where there's a lag where, I might have a report that gets reported every 2 months. Maybe I can get it faster so I can make better decisions. And we want it to be accurate, right? We don't want to look at a source file or different files and say like this number's going to tie out. Then you lose trust in your reporting. So you just want to make sure that you get it as accurate as possible. So at Royal Blue Analytics, we use a user-centered design methodology. And basically it's an iterative process here. So basically we go through an analysis period. So an analysis period is we actually connect with the stakeholders. We ask a lot of questions and we kind of understand what it is that they're really trying to achieve with the report that they're trying to build out. So we ask a lot of questions up front and we humanize them, right? We want to see exactly what it is that they are hoping to achieve. Then we start to go into the actual design process. And that doesn't necessarily mean we're in the development process, we're in a design. So we start to think about what type of reports can we build out and what does that look like? What does a wireframe look like? What does a good report look like? Does it hit the mark? And then from there, you go into actual evaluation. So you ask the questions, you give it back to your stakeholders. And then as you see the gray arrow, you see it goes back to design. So this is the loop to where you can have an iterative process, right? We did our part, we give it off for evaluation. Maybe it hit the mark, maybe it didn't hit the mark. If it did hit the mark, great, we move on to implementation. But if not, we go back to design, go back to the drawing board, make sure we're good, give it back to them for evaluation. Then as long as all the parties agree, we go into implementation. So now we start actually implementing the design, the dashboards, information. And then from there, we go back into evaluation. Let the end user evaluate what's being implemented. Is it what we agreed upon? Sometimes what happens is that you get your data, you see the information, and then it starts to spark other questions as well, which is part of the evaluation process. You incorporate those answers that you have, then go back to implementation, you do it all over again. So this is called user-centered design. There's a lot of information out there. This is a step that we use. Another thing that we use at Royal Blue Analytics, this is a 4-step dashboard development methodology. Step number 1, discovery. I'm going to harp on this. We want to make sure we ask a lot of questions up front. The more questions, the more information you can gather up front, the less down the line you don't necessarily hinder yourself. So we ask a lot of questions here. Step 2, we do a wireframing process. It's much easier to create a wireframe of what can potentially happen and show on a visualization than it is to actually get in there and actually start developing from our experience. So we do a wireframing process. where we try and show conceptually what this information could look like. Then we start the development process where we're actually starting to design and actually implement with the data they have there. And then we do testing and development. So step 1 is discovery, step 2, wireframe, step 3 is development, and then step 4 is testing and deployment. Discovery and requirements gathering. What we do, ask a lot of questions. So the left side, we have our data. The biggest piece I feel like you always need to ask when you're creating a story is, what are your data sources? What is the information we're going to capture this stuff at? Identify the transformation. So what are relationships between the tables? Are there any filters that should be applied? So do we only want to look at the last 3 years worth of data, even though the data set might have 10 years worth of information? Are there things we want to exempt? What type of information can be removed? Like, what can be applied at the source so we're not leveraging it downstream? What calculations can be performed at the source as well, not necessarily in the BI tool of choice? So what can we do ahead of time that needs to be done? And then we want to identify the data freshness. How often is the source data updated? I feel like this is an important question that people don't necessarily ask all the time. There's no point in setting up a refresh schedule for hourly if your source data set only gets refreshed monthly. So make sure you understand what the source itself is doing and what the frequency of the data update will be. And then how often does the report need to be updated? So like I mentioned just a second ago, if your source data set is updated monthly, there's no point in having a much more aggressive refresh time there, just because it's going to hinder resources that you'll be using for other reports. And then data security, right? Sometimes we talked about healthcare earlier. Is there PHI information? Should the sales information be limited by region? So should the salespeople in the South region only see sales information, or should they see everything across the board? Another thing we do is reporting. What are the key metrics? What problems are you trying to solve? What questions are you trying to answer? As a business owner and as a consultant, I should say, I feel like this is the business call to make. I can come in as a consultant and make recommendations on your key metrics, but I don't know if you necessarily want me to come in there and say this is a key metric. I can make suggestions, but ultimately I feel like the onus is on the business. Be like, hey, these are the key things that we want to measure. These are things that I think are required, and then you get buy-in there. My perspective on it, I can make up metrics all day, but if it's not key to the business, then I'm not sure if that's the best use of some of the time. I think the business should definitely make a decision on some of their key metrics. What slice and dice detail is needed? So what type of dimensions? What are we doing? What information do we have? How would the reporting be consumed? Best case scenario for this example, it is consumed from Power BI itself, but sometimes they might just need to see this information in Excel, can't escape it. Sometimes they might want to see this in PowerPoint as well. So really understanding how they want to consume this information. Will it be mobile? Will it be from an iPad? Will it be someone working on the floor? Will it be in front of someone's computer? So understanding how they consume it can kind of detail how you will present it to them. And what frequency will this report be used? So just because you develop a report, it goes out as great, doesn't mean it'll always be used every day. So kind of have a pulse of like, how will this be used? So if you're building out an annual infographic of your last year details, then you know from the jump that it will be used frequently, but not as frequently as someone who's built out an operations report where they're getting information at the hour. So really understanding that helps out a lot. What alert subscription features are needed? What design aesthetics should be used? So we'll go into an actual template later on, but having a template can save you a whole bunch of time later. Yes.
There was a question. Can you expand a little bit on getting the right metrics?
Sure. Yeah. So this is, again, my personal experience. So the right metrics, depending on who you are, I'm going to come from the consultant angle because I'm a consultant. So if I'm coming into your business, I feel like there should be questions of, all right, what are your top 5 metrics? What are your key components? What are you measuring, or what are you trying to solve? So it could be as simple as like, I want a report that measures XYZ day. You can build that report, but is that solving the problem of what they're ultimately trying to do, or they're just trying to see a viewpoint of information that they have? So I think it's more conversational of, what are we trying to solve? What is the problem? And then from there, you kind of have the back and forth. And then if they understand what their key metrics are beforehand as well, then it kind of helps as well. So you want to make sure that you're showing that information that is key. You don't want to necessarily show information that's irrelevant just because it looks pretty. You want to make sure you're showing the key information for the business that you are showing. Again, that's coming from a consultant. As an employee, if I was there, it could be a chance to where you might not know what your metrics are, right? You're coming up, you're being tasked to be like, hey, my key metrics are this. Again, it starts going back to who is the decision maker, who's the audience, who is consuming this information. And then you start having a conversation like, all right, because of experience or because of who I talk to, I think these are the 5 most important key metrics. And then you kind of get sign off on that. But just displaying 100 different metrics where they might not be valuable for your end audience, I just don't think that is solving the problem that you think you might be trying to solve. Good question. Any other questions?
There's nothing else in the chat right now.
Oh, cool. Awesome. All right, let's get into wireframing. What is wireframing? Wireframes are created to visualize the layout and design of your dashboard. Basically, it allows stakeholders to visualize the layout and structure before any development begins. So if you've done a scrap piece of paper and you drew where my chart should be at, my KPI should live here, my layout looks like this, you've done wireframing, and you've done that with a scrap piece of paper. This serves as a basis for gathering feedback from stakeholders and investing time. I like to say this, I really feel like investing time in wireframing upfront can save you time and cost during the development process. So you can save a whole bunch of time by quickly creating a wireframe, a few hours to say, hey, directionally, this is what I think. We're turning over time, my KPIs look like this. We want a % change. I want this layout here. Your logo should go in the top right. Your filter should go in the top left, right? That's much easier to do in a really quick format. And I'll show you some tools to do that than it is to actually go into Power BI, start developing, and 2 weeks have gone by and you missed the mark completely. So wireframing, I think, helps speed up that process a lot. And then, as we talked about earlier, user-centered design by focusing on the needs and preferences of the end user. You hand a end user a wireframe, and then you iterate on it, and then the preferences are there. Then you get sign off, and everything looks good when you actually start getting to the development process. So there's 2 types of wireframing. There's low fidelity. Low fidelity wireframes focus on the overall layout and structure of the user interface without incorporating specific detailed design elements such as color, fonts, or images. There are 2 specific tools that I'm going to use today. One is going to be Miro, and then the other is going to be Balsamiq, and they're really easy to use. So we go here. Miro is a free tool. If you haven't used it before, you go ahead and log in. I'm using the free license version. What you would do is you can create a rectangle. I'll just show you how to do it. So what you can do is come in here and create just a blank canvas of sorts. So if I did, I don't want that. I don't want sticking up shape. So come in here and select a shape, and your width and height, which is the standard 920. You can do that. Then you can change your background to be color. I have a white background. And then now you can start placing actual elements on here as well. So if I go to more apps, there should be an element where it says charts. You can't see it. It might be on by default, but there's a chart element here. You can select charts, and then it'll give you like actual icons. You have your pie chart, your bar chart horizontal, and your funnel chart. What you can do is start dragging that on, and then you can make it bigger. And then if I want to then bring on a bar chart, circle chart, I can do that. And so on and so forth, right? You start placing directionally what stuff can look like. I want to do a text box, I can do that. Call it KPI, increase your size, so on and so forth, right? You can start like actually mapping this out. And as you can see, it took me 2 seconds to do. I have 0 Miro experience. I'm not the greatest at it, but you can start doing this process of what your layout could potentially look like and what that can be. So this is Miro. If I go to Balsamiq, which I think I have on here, it might yell at me. Balsamiq is another low-code tool that allows you to create wireframes on here. Yeah, this one expired. But basically, let me do it. Project. Yeah, I have my trial ended, so it won't let me do it locally, but I think I can do it in the cloud. But basically, if you go to the cloud of Balsamiq, you can start to drag and drop and create your own different elements on here. This is expired, but basically just shows how you can create actual templates and actually start add in components to it. So this is a low fidelity type of mockup where you have your actual table, you have your chart, you have your visuals, you have that, and then you can actually start making it high fidelity if you wanted to. There are other tools for that, but as you can see, right, we are starting to place items on here that take a few seconds to do. You export that out, you show it to your stakeholders, and then you're saying, hey, is this what it looks like? This is what you're expecting to see. So this is Balsamic. Next demo, I'll make sure I have my license active for that. All right, next one, high fidelity. So high fidelity wireframes are detailed, refined representations of digital interface that resemble the final product in terms of layout, design, color, items, icons, images, so on and so forth. There are two different tools that I particularly use. The first one being Figma. I use Figma a lot for wireframing, and then Mockup. I just found out about Mockup yesterday, and I love it so far. So I'm gonna show you these two particular tools on how to create an actual high fidelity wireframe. They say Sketch is really good, and then Adobe XD, Adobe Photoshop, and PowerPoint. And they being ChatGPT, who's what said the tools are good. I haven't used Sketch or Adobe XD or Adobe Photoshop. I have done some wireframing in PowerPoint, but my two favorite are Figma and Mockup. So if we go into Figma, here's an example of what a high fidelity mockup can start looking like. So as you can see, we have our background on here, and then we have our actual borders and information on here as well. So we have placement of the actual icons, we have logos, we have color, we have the left side of where our filters can live at. We have like our borders on here that look like they're hopping off the page. We're using modern design techniques, so on and so forth. So we're starting to get that background information of what it can look like. We scroll down, again, we can change it up to see what this looks like, but then really seeing what a end result of a mockup can potentially look like is here. This is one that we built out for an internal project I'm trying to build out just for as a presentation, as a portfolio, I should say. And just wanted to really start mapping this out of where my filters could look like, whether it be at where they're located. And then we're trying to do some stuff where we're trying to mock up like an incident data, incident information. So as you can see now, we have actual charts and graphs and visuals of what it can look like. It's not using real data at this moment, but the goal is when we actually get actual information, these are where this information will live. So we see here our KPIs, we want them specifically up here. And when I say KPI, those are key performance indicators. So these are the important metrics that we're trying to call out quickly. We make sure we have those up here. These are where they will live. Then you have your information, you tick it in, you start seeing your graphs and charts. Within Figma, what you can do is actually change the color that you want. So if you select on the bar, you can select the color. So if there are specific hex values that you have that you're using, you can leverage that here, and you can actually start creating a mock-up of the information of the colors for your actual report itself. So you have that information in here. If I want to change it to something else, quickly change that value, and then you can do that, or you can come in here and type it in as well. So it allows you to do that. And then from here, what we're seeing is that you can export this image out, give it to a stakeholder. Hey, this is directionally where we think we're going to go. Does the navigation look and feel right? Do you want your filters on your top, or do you want them on the left? Do you want them on the right? These are the buttons, this is the logo, so on and so forth, right? So it's a lot easier to do this again and export this out to give them to your stakeholders than it is to, let's say you actually start developing this information 2 weeks down the line, and they're like, I don't like the layout of this at all. I want this to change. Well, if you've done this in Power BI, you knew that this button needs to be moved, this button needs to be moved. You probably did some actions on it already. You probably did some bookmarks. So you spend a lot of time trying to get it to go and navigate where they just want you to move it all. It's kind of a pain. Takes a lot more time. So just like showing this and giving it to the stakeholder, it shows that you're doing stuff too as well, adds instant value, but then also gets really good stakeholder buy-in and buyout. And this is Figma. So this is mockup, free license structure. I'm actually about to post a YouTube video after this call because I recorded it this morning where I'll kind of walk through it. But basically it's a free license, and then it's a $10 a month per license. And it's so freaking cool. Like, it's one of my favorite tools that I found this year. And as you can see, is when you create your project, there are all these different reporting elements on the left side. And it's so simple to just drag this on, and it allows you to choose the style of the actual graph that you pick. So if you want to do a basic column, you can do that. Or if you have it to where you have a filter or a slicer in your top right, you do that. Or if you want to do a combo chart, let's say you want to do a KPI element here, but then you have your filter drop down here as well. You can do that, so on and so forth, right? You can do the different combo charts. In this example, let's say I did want to bring this in, hit apply style. Just that quick, like it's already on here and it's laid out and cleared. And then if I want to do a area chart, I can drag that on here, keep that on as a default. I can make it bigger, taller, spread it out. My favorite is the KPIs. So if I have a KPI, all these different KPI styles are on here. So title goes here, this look and feel versus this month, right? I'm able to quickly just select which one I would need to do. Using some of these other tools, you have to group, drag, drop, do all the different changes on here. You can copy and paste and bring it all together. And then literally within like 5 minutes, like if I wanted to like clean this up, I have a wireframe that I could give to a stakeholder and be like, hey, this is what it can look like. One piece of advice here is you need to understand what tool you're using and the limitations of it and what the effort that will take. So if I was looking at this, I know that the new card visual in Power BI can actually do this. It will take a little bit of hacking, but you can use the reference label and reference line. Whereas before, it would be kind of a headache to get that verse previous and 10%. So a lot of part of wireframing when you're working with someone, or if you're doing it yourself, understand what the tool can actually do, because it's much easier to create a wireframe than sometimes it is to actually deliver. So you just want to make sure that the stuff that's saying can be done in the tool of choice that you're using. But this is mockup. Like I said, I absolutely love it. It's really, really simple. It's really, really easy. And then from there, you can just share it, export it out, send it as a file, PNG, JPEG, PDF, whatever it is. I'm likely gonna upgrade to Pro. It's only $100 per year, $10 a month for anything. And I don't make any money off of it, but just the ease of use of it and just how many reports I built out, it's just a really, really fantastic tool. So that is mockup. Again, just found it yesterday. All right, so Power BI's role in data storytelling. Microsoft Fabric Power BI allows users to transfer raw information into appealing charts, graphs, and dashboards. Power BI integrates seamlessly with various data sources, enabling users to analyze and derive insights from data to drive business outcomes. The role of visualizations. Visualizations enable users to explore data sets and identify patterns, trends, relationships. And as I mentioned earlier, it's much easier for someone to understand information from a visualization than it is from a raw table. You can get your insights a lot faster. Our brain processes that information a lot faster. I think it's like 60% faster, or something like 600 times faster to understand a visualization or a key insight than it is to actually read through a column and table. So make sure you're using visualizations right. Visualizations serve as powerful communication tools that conveys complex information in clear and concise manner if you do it right. Sometimes they're very complex visualizations that communicate stuff very complex, like very challenging. Like if you're trying to use a Sankey chart to show change over time, sometimes that can get really, really challenging. So make sure you're using the appropriate visualization for what you need. And then visualizations can tell compelling stories that engage and captivate audiences. As we talked about, humanize your information, understanding your audience as well. So understanding your audience, big piece. I've seen a lot of people fail here. I've been a failure at this at one point. When you understand your audience, you understand who you're developing towards. So I'm creating a dashboard. Have I asked appropriate questions? Who will consume this information? Is it an executive level audience? So executives typically need the high level information. They might not necessarily need the detail. They might want to be able to get to the detail, but at the highest level, they may just want to see 10 KPIs up front. What was my trending over time? What was my percent change from last month? You know, I really want the high level information. That's what I'm building out to. I want an executive level view. On the other side, you might have operations level focus, where people who need to see the hourly, by day, by whatever, they need that granular information for their workforce, or if they're at a call center, or if they're at a branch, you know, working on something, right? They need to see what's going on in their information as fast as possible. So then you provide that more detailed level information for your report. And then public. Sometimes there are public facing dashboards, visualizations that go out there. You want to make sure that if you're doing something public, that it is just that is meant for the public. So you're not having any proprietary information out there that cannot be accessed by the external folks. So just make sure you understand who your audience is. Choose the right visualizations. Pie charts aren't always evil. I like to harp on that. If you have more than 3 categories in pie charts, are not your best friend. So 2-3 categories, you're good. More than that, use a bar chart, you're good there. Databizcatalog.com is one of my favorite websites that I use if I'm like, I don't know what website I should go to, or I don't know what visualization I should actually create. Bookmark it, definitely use this. So basically the concept is, here are the different type of visualizations that I can use and then how they're used. Or if you're just like, I want to search by function. So if I want to look at proportions or relationships or part to a whole or movement or over time, my favorite one is say, I want to look at data over time. This gives you different capabilities of different visuals that can show you change over time. If I come over here and select the area graph, not only does it show you what it can look like, but it gives you an actual description of what they're used for and how they're used. And then it gives you also similar charts that can be used in replacement. So we don't want just like, sometimes the redundancy of using the same chart over and over is necessarily our favorite. So we might want to switch it up. This gives you a couple variations here as well. So you have group and stack area charts. But I love this website. I use it quite often when I'm stuck and I don't know exactly what I want to use or what I want to show. So databizcatalog.com, highly recommend it if you haven't used it before. All right, so incorporating storytelling techniques. So what we want to do is start with a compelling hook. We want to make sure that if someone is taking time to look at a report we built out, why are they looking at it? Why do they care? Like, there's a million reports. Our attention span, especially after post-COVID, it's very short. So we want to make sure that we capture them immediately as much as possible. And then we start telling them the information that it is that they want to see. We're going to give appropriate context where it makes sense. We're going to make sure that they understand what's going on in their visualization. You don't want to over context, but you want to make sure that you have the appropriate context. Use clear and accessible language. So make sure you are clear and concise in any context that you are using, and that your language is appropriate and accessible for your audience. Highlight key insights. So I keep mentioning this key information, your KPIs, key things. Highlight that. Make sure that you're bringing into fruition the stuff that's important and valuable. And then engage emotionally. So understand what you're trying to actually articulate. So as I mentioned earlier, healthcare information. So if you're creating a dashboard that is trying to show a positive trend of your patient and the diagnosis. So our diagnosis rate of blank is going down, right? That's an emotional thing. Maybe we launched I work for a pharmaceutical company. We launched a new drug and we see that the rate of this particular diagnosis is going down. We might have a key insight, trend over trend, whatever, right? What is that emotional piece that we're trying to engage in? Likewise, if there's something that is going the other way, so if I'm doing something in banking, we see that our number of credit cards have spiked because of XYZ event. How can I engage that emotion to show that story or articulate that information? So try and engage with the emotion as possible. Don't just dump information onto a report when you just need to do it. So these are some storytelling techniques. All right, so what we're going to do now is hop into a quick demo in Power BI. So in Power BI, we're going to use some of these techniques. So as you can see here, we have a very great, amazing dashboard. This is fantastic, right? We got a lot of valuable information. We know what's important. We know that we have our furniture, office supplies, and technology in one area. Our KPIs are great, clearly defined. There's enough context. Our color usage is amazing. We also know that our segment is great and it's arranged in a fantastic area, and we know exactly what's going on. This report's trash. This report is absolutely awful. And so what we do, if we look at this, like, how can we actually change this story and change it around to actually be something that's super, super valuable for not only the developer, but the people who are consuming it. So we go to our actual KPI summary. We see that we're actually building out this information and building out the KPIs that are valuable. We have stuff laid out where it's clear and concise to where the person who comes in can see exactly what's going on. Another thing as well is we have our KPIs underneath there, but then we're giving context of where we're at over time per those KPIs. And then we're using color specifically. So if we're looking at our total profit by subcategory, we see that the blue means that it is one of the highest value, whereas the orange represents that is actual negative. And this is consistent across the board. So if I look at tables, we see that this is a negative value. If I go to Texas, we see that this is negative value as well. And then in our actual scatter plot, we see the same thing. So we're using color specifically to draw in. When you see orange, that's negative. When you see blue, that's positive information. Another thing as well is we can't get away from it, but people do want to see the raw information, raw details that make up this information. So instead of cramming it all in one area, all in one dashboard, we can leverage some navigation and give them that information. So if I click here, it takes you to another tab to where you're then providing the same look and feel, but then you actually have the detailed information. So it kind of supports the two personas that you might be developing for, where you have your executive level view, where you see like the high level information, and then you have your actual granular information that has information called out. Again, we're using the same use of color for the negative and positives. This orange here will reflect that information, same color we have on the first page, and so on and so forth. So this is an example of how we switched from just throwing stuff on our report to making it look good to actually having a clear layout to where your navigation across both pages is the same. So, between both pages, my filters are at the top and my navigation between one and the other is in the top right. All right, so creating a template, as we talked about earlier, creating a template makes this process a lot faster. I'll quickly walk through this. So templates allow you to use the same font style, font size, color palettes, and then they have a general design layout. So where should your KPIs go? Where should your filters go? How do you identify interactive features? And then how many elements should be on a single dashboard / report, depending on what audience, because I know Power BI report users hate saying dashboard, has one meaning. So where should it live on a single report? Template guidelines. So prioritize requirements. Keep putting the emphasis on this. Get the requirements. Talk to your stakeholders. Connect with them. Only use what's important. If it's not important, don't put it on here. Use blank text boxes or pen and papers. We talked about the wireframing process. You start building this out, so you start creating your templates. Design to a grid. So there's a great book called Big Book of Dashboards that I think I have back here. Yep, I have it back here. Big Book of Dashboards. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It shows you how to actually design to a grid. And what that looks like is this. So this is what a grid looks like. You have your actual information where you see. So in this grid, my KPIs live in here, but then I have my monthly sales by region, details, highlight tables. I'm designing to a grid. And then also I have my sales per state and then sales per category. So you can see that it's much easier to design and have a layout in the grid versus if you're just floating your objects anywhere and there's not necessarily a line. It's much easier for you to consume your information in a grid. This example of a 5-chart grid. You go to a 4-chart grid, you see the exact same thing here. Your KPIs are this, chart 1, chart 2, chart 3, chart 4 is in a grid. You have your logo and filter icons up there. 3-chart grid. So as you can see, right, you're designing towards a grid where your stuff should lay out. It's a lot cleaner, it's a lot smoother, a lot easier to consume. Incorporate bands and add context. So bands are big aggregated numbers or big cuss word numbers. They're just huge numbers, right? They're big. They're your KPIs. You want to make sure that they are important information that screams to your customer or your stakeholder. This is important. I want you to know this is important. So I'm going to make it super huge so you can see what information I'm showing you. Bands should either be in the top area. So they should either be up here because they're very important, or they should be on the left side. So the reason being is that as humans, we read from Z. So we read from left, down, right. So your most important information should always be in the top portion because we start on the left side and then we move over to the right. So if your bands are in this general area, then you're cool because at least you see it on your left side or your right side. If you have it flipped to where your bands, your KPIs are on the right side, this is saying that my sales per region is the most important information that I want you to look at when you log in here. And that might not necessarily be the case, but your eye naturally draws to the left side. And then by the time you go all the way to the right side, you have sales per region, you have a text table, you have a highlight table. 3 visuals that you've seen before you even got to your KPIs. And as I mentioned earlier, our attention span is really, really short. So you need to make sure that you have your information that's important up there fast so your end users can consume it a lot faster. And then if I have this at the bottom, then just, I looked at my monthly sales by region, text table, highlight table. I even got a map. I got a bar chart. We know most people, when they live in a map, they're like, oh man, I got a nice map. I loved it. You look at that, you haven't even looked at your actual KPIs at the bottom. So don't put your KPIs on the bottom because by the time People have looked at your visualization, your KPIs at the bottom will be the last thing, when realistically, your KPI should be the first thing that people look at. Use size of position to show a hierarchy. So basically, we want to incorporate filters up here. So anytime you can use it in Power BI using the bookmark panel sometimes, or you can have a dedicated space. So like I did in the Titan side, I have my filter slicers on the left side. You can use the filter panel if you're particular about that in Power BI as well. Kind of your preference, a lot of different things here, but you don't want your filters to always take up a lot of space. You might want to show them, you might not. It just depends on the sheer amount of volume that you have. But you do get precious real estate by using a filter. You want your company logo on the top right, typically title. So what's the dashboard? Provide the proper context. And then we have our layout as well. So we want to make sure that appropriate thing is here. And then we start our priority of the reports from left to right. So based on a conversation, when we talk to our stakeholders, we know that they really want to see the sales by region. This is very, very important. So we have that layout here. They want to see the text table, highlight table, and then the map and bar chart as well. So by subcategory. But you start to lay out your visualizations in order of priority, what you think is correct by the stakeholders. And then begin to talk about the use, begin to think about icons and use the color. So you want to specifically use color for specific reasons and icons. So a good use of icons I've seen is to have them by your KPIs. So you can have examples of up, down, arrow down, or actual sales or whatever thing to give it a little bit of pop. But you want to make sure it is there. You don't want to add icons to every single thing, then kind of you're losing the potential insight of your story. You're starting to add, just different things to give your stuff some not good substance. And whereas your icons just give it a little bit of pop, but you want your data to tell the story. Don't be that person that uses a cat in the background for your dashboards just because you don't know what to do and you don't know what you're showing. So make sure you're using relevant categories and backgrounds for your information. And then after we've done that, we want to deploy it. So we want to publish our semantic model or data source, schedule necessary refreshes to keep data up to date, and then document your information. So oftentimes we get in it, like we're fully invested in our actual development, but then we come back and be like, oh man, how did I do that? What did I do? I don't remember what I did. Document your work, make sure you got the information that you need so you can revisit it later on. And then reporting, meet with your end users to review the output. So we talk about the iterative loop. Make sure that you are connecting with them and talking to them and seeing does it hit the mark. Look at your usage metrics. So as you created a report, look at your end users that are actually using it. See how many times they log in, see what their interaction is. Connect with the people who are using it quite often, see what they love about it, see what they would change. Connect with your users who aren't logging in at all, see why aren't they logging in? What can you do to make it better for them? So gather that feedback, iterate on it, improve your dashboards. Show them how to enable alerts and subscriptions to improve this information. So maybe they want to see a daily view every day. Show them how to do that. And then, like I said, monitor usage reports. And then don't forget to have your end users quantify value. Big thing when a report goes out there to a big audience, I like to send a survey out. And the survey will have maybe 2 or 3 open-ended text type of questions. And then I'll have 2 or 3 questions of 1 through 5. So, 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest, 3 questions of those. I can quantify my actual value. So I can say that, they love this. On average, my users love this. This is a 3.5. This is a 5. Or also I can say that, our usage of productivity has been blank, right? There's a lot of ways you can quantify your value. And then another way is to actually get stakeholders, communicate with them and say like, all right, you were doing this manual process that took you 4 hours a week. Now you have an Power BI report. You gain, that only takes you 15 minutes to do your actual job. You gain 3 hours and 45 minutes of your day to actually use it on something else, right? There's a way to quantify value there too. So make sure that, you give out a report, a visualization, and then quantify the results of what you added value to. And as I talked about, a 4-step methodology: discovery, wireframe, development, testing, and deployment. This has worked for us. We love it at Royal Blue. It's great. Yeah. And then from there, top 5 best practices for dashboard design. I took this from the internet, but it's a really good chart. And I need to modify it. But basically, these are my things that I consider being the top choices. Number 1, consider your audience. I feel like you need to understand who your audience is. Choose relevant KPIs, provide appropriate context, use the right type of chart. put an emphasis on that, use the right chart. Be careful with colors, be specific with the colors that you use, be consistent with labeling. This is one of my biggest pet peeves when I go on Power BI reports, that someone might have a label, because Power BI does this by default. You click a text value, it might have one particular formatting. You do a bar chart, it has a different formatting. You have not done the work to make sure you're using the same format across the board. Use templates out there. Make sure you do that. Be consistent with the labeling. It drives me mad, absolutely mad. So make sure you're using the consistent labeling with your dashboards and your reports. Some of y'all probably should go back and look at your reports and see if I'm using consistent labeling, and update it, and just look at like how clean your story will be when you have the same font and the same font size across the board. Much better, much more cleaner when you do it that way. Consider using a template, and then never stop evolving. This is a process, it's a loop. Always keep evolving. I heard Denzel say this one time, where he still goes to acting classes, and Denzel Washington is like one of the greatest actors of all time. If someone asked him, why does he still go back to acting classes? He's like, if I go there and I could just learn one new thing, then it's all worth it. So as you evolve and look at different visualizations, different storytelling, read different books, implement those things in your journey as you evolve in storytelling. Like, no one has it mastered, but we can always get better in our design. So always keep evolving, always keep looking at new tools or new ways of storytelling. That way you can ultimately connect with your stakeholder, because at the end, these are the people that are consuming your information. These are the people who are probably paying the bills, keeping the lights on. They're probably executive focused or what have you. So make sure that you are giving the right information to the end audience, so that they can be happy, ultimately happy as possible, I should say. And with that, Q&A, any questions? All right. What tool do you use for wireframing and color forms? Just kidding. Okay. I think I skipped through that. Any other questions? I don't think so.
Guys are a quiet group today.
Yeah. All right. My QR code, go to my website, please. This is my business account. My wife told me I should have made this a link tree. I just didn't do it yet. But go subscribe to my newsletter. Go to royalblueanalytics.com. I'm out there. I'll have content out there. I'm doing a newsletter next Friday on top 10 steps of how to create a Power BI portfolio for public consumption. Go out there, check it out. I'm trying to post more and get more information out there for you. So thank you all for attending. Appreciate it. Thanks for letting me pivot from Copilot to data visualization storytelling. Appreciate you taking time out this morning.
Hey, Seiko, can you still take a question?
Yeah, for sure.
If there was one book or website or something that's inspired you that one of us could go pick up, you dropped so many cool things. What would be the first place you would suggest somebody go?
Oh man, that's a great one.
And think about it. You can always put it back out later, but
no, that's a good question because we got time. Let's see. So storytelling with data is a great one. So I like her content a lot. Her being Nicole, what's her name? I can't think of her name, but she's in here and she leads a lot of different podcasts, but she has a lot of different blogs and books, different makeovers, a lot of information there. Andy Kriebel, he's big in the Tableau community, but his concepts are really strong. He is great. And like I said, it's Tableau, but basically a lot of the concepts of storytelling and stuff are there. He has a lot of cool things on there. Let's see, who's been fire in the Power BI community? There have been a few more people that have been really, really great, especially from the storytelling side. Oh, Carrie Kowalski. She has dropped some fire. Carrie has. So a lot of stuff out here for Deneb. I kind of follow what they're doing and seeing some of the cool things that they're doing in Power BI. She has some really good stuff. Data Pairs, I think that's her name. I can't think of her name off the top of my head. Data Pairs, she is really good. She has a really good YouTube channel on here where she shows kind of concepts of report building, like how I did with Figma and how to create stuff, design tricks as well. She's a good person. Bass in the Power BI community. How to Power BI. He's dropped some heat lately too. Bass, How to Power BI. He has some really good videos on here, like how to do calc groups and like buttons and different design stuff. He's really good. He's a person I've been keeping track of too. And then if you haven't already, I would say go to Workout Wednesday if you haven't heard of this challenge. The challenge is Workout Wednesday. And there are specific Power BI challenges that people in the community, in the Power BI community, come up with, and you start to learn different type of skill sets or different type of ways of presenting data. And the hardest part, I think, when it comes to some of the skill sets, like when you're working it with your customer or with your employer, you know that data set, you know exactly what you're looking at, and you kind of are familiar with it. With these challenges, I found that it's already a data set that's already pre-populated, so you can come in here, you don't have to think about finding a data set, but then you also have something that you're working towards. So example of this could be Shannon has created this matrix, right? And it could be like figuring out how to create this matrix in Power BI. So there are weekly challenges that come in here, and you kind of learn a lot of different techniques that you could then leverage for different things. So I know you said one, but those are the things.
No. This is awesome. I don't have the creativity, but I can steal from other people. So that's why
exactly.
I like it. You
I do it all the time. I do it absolutely all the time. Like I look at the Tableau community a lot, and I'm like, whoa, these are really great. Oh, it brings me to a point actually. Pinterest is underrated. So you can go to Pinterest and search for dashboards, and you can get a lot of inspiration from there as well. So if you haven't already, if you like what a layout could look like or what I can think of, like go to Pinterest, go there, and then you'll see like a lot of different things that people have already done. So Pinterest is one. The Power BI community, they have a lot of visualizations that people post. Tableau community, Tableau Public has a lot of stuff in there as well. So, oh yeah, I steal all the time. And I'm like, oh, I need to implement this, or this needs to be added. So it helps with that process too. So, but those are some of the people that I follow and keep track of and see what they're doing in the community.
Perfect. Thank you. I just saw a question come through, I think, on the board too.
You can send these name sites. Yeah, I got you. I'll put it in a follow-up message, or put it in a newsletter, or I put it in a video. Actually, thanks, James, for that. I'll put it in a YouTube video of the different community initiatives that I follow. All right, and as Sina, please someone was also search for a job opportunity. I don't think we mentioned that earlier. If someone is hiring, wait, should I do that now, Mike? Were you gonna close out with that? It's all good. I'll put you on the spot. I'll let Mike close out. If he wants to do that, then cool. If not, I can do it from here. But ultimately, put it in chat if you're hiring. Let us know. We want to make sure that people come together and can get potential opportunities as well. So we'll definitely let you know what's going on. So I got any other questions? Ooh, Novi Pro. Oh, I've heard of Novi Pro. Yeah, I've heard of this. So I think I've heard of people. Okay, so Novi Pro is awesome because it allows you to embed your personal projects in here. So if you are using multiple tools and you don't necessarily have a blog site that you want to pay for, like you don't have a WordPress, you don't have a different thing, you can use Novi Pro and embed your visualizations in here. It becomes all one fashion, one format, and then you can see existing stuff as well. So, oh, Gustav, follow Gustav on LinkedIn. This guy dropped some heat. He has some really good visualizations out there. He's doing some really cool stuff with SVG. Lot of stuff out there, man. He's like a guy I follow where like I'm not in awe a lot. I'm in awe when Gustav drops stuff, and he drops it like constantly. So definitely check him out. He has some good stuff on here. But yeah, this is Novi Pro is awesome. So as you can see, if you scroll down, you can see what people have posted, and then you can kind of see like some of the cool things they've done on here. So and then you get likes as well. So like everything, there's a community initiative, and I think some of the likes like will bump you up further potentially. But you can see like some of the cool stuff. And I think you can interact with it as well. I think if I click on one, Yeah, so you can come in here and actually interact with it. I don't think you can download it, but you can see like how they're done. You see like the page navigation and stuff on the side, how they use icons, the KPIs, the layouts, the buttons, just different things like that, right? So people are like putting like a lot of public facing stuff out here for users, and then you can comment on it and like. So yeah, Novi Pro is awesome. I haven't personally used it, but it's definitely a great site for inspiration as well. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining. Appreciate it. We'll send a follow-up email with the stuff. DataTune, keep harping on it. If you haven't already, please go to DataTune. You'll see a lot of stuff about visualization, storytelling, fabric. Just get better. If you're in Nashville, come through. It's going to be a great conference. I'm on the leadership team of it, so please support. If you see me, come speak to me. Like, I'm very personable. So if you're out there, pull up. Thank you so much, and y'all have a great day, and I'll pass it to Mike.
So can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you, Sekou. That was a great presentation. We just want to take a quick second to see if there are any job opportunities, anybody hiring for a data analytics professional, business intelligence professional. Feel free to take yourself off mute. All right. Well, thank you. That was a really fascinating talk. I appreciate all of that. I got some great insights. All those websites you were sharing were really fantastic. And you know, something that I really appreciated that I don't do enough of is going back to the user and trying to quantify that value. That was such a useful tip. I'm gonna have to start doing more of that. Start doing better at that. That was a really great note. So thank you for that. Be sure to check us out March 21st for our next session. So I'll be talking about requirements gathering, and I am definitely going to bring up wireframing again. I think that's so important to everything. Is so important to the foundation of the project. I can't promise you that if you wireframe that it will go well for you. I can promise you that if you don't wireframe, it is almost certainly going to go poorly. I can't tell you how many times that I've seen projects, just rattle along for months and months, and a lot of times it's because people don't know what they're trying to accomplish, and you can short circuit a lot of that with a good wireframe, or even just an easy wireframe for that matter. Pencil and paper, marker on a dry erase board, it does wonders. So we'll definitely talk more about that next month, and a lot of other stuff as well. And be sure to check out DataTune. Just between now and then, it's coming up in just a few weeks. That's going to be a great conference. I'm really looking forward to that. Sekou and others are doing some really hard work on it, so definitely sign up for that. And we look forward to seeing you guys there and at our next session on Thursday, March 21st. All right, thanks you guys.